Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the sumptuous lunch. Thank you very much for the Conrad Hotel for that. And I hope we're all set for the fireside chats that are going to take place this afternoon. Our first session focuses on mitigation efforts. It's time for us to get real thinking about net zero. And here to moderate this session, let's all welcome United Nations Environment Programme Goodwill Ambassador and founder of the non-profit organization CORA, Communities Organized for Resource Allocation, Ms. Antoinette Taus.
Thank you very, very much for that kind introduction. And of course, thank you to you all for being here with us today. Today is about partnerships, collaboration, and coming together for a better future for all, for everyone, everywhere, where no one is left behind. It is truly an honor to facilitate and moderate this very important discussion on sustainability and on climate advocacy. And more than that, how we here today, not just us, but the cascading efforts can come together so that we can lead the way to a sustainable way forward. Now, we hope you are feeling energized and refreshed from the lovely, sumptuous lunch that we just had. And we believe that you are most definitely ready to dive into yet another interesting discussion and conversation. Now, the terms net zero strategy, decarbonization, and carbon offsets are often thrown around in many conversations surrounding the issue of GHGs, or greenhouse gas emissions. Now, many companies worldwide have already pledged or announced net zero targets. But the question truly is it enough? And with corporations under pressure to make net zero commitments, what realities are they really facing? Now, how hard is it to strike a balance between integrity and, of course, practicality in their organization's climate agenda? Now, for this fireside chat, we have a guest panel of industry leaders who will share their insights on the matter. First, I am honored to introduce the Executive Director in charge of Group Risk Management and Sustainability of Ayala Corporation, one of the largest conglomerates in the Philippines. Please welcome Ms. Vicky Tan. Our next panelist is the Chief Sustainability Officer of PLDT and SMART and Investor Relations Head of PLDT. She has been with PLDT since May 2001 and has held various positions, including Property and Facilities Management Center Head. Please welcome Ms. Melissa Vergel de Dios. Our next panelist leads the finance, strategic planning, and business development teams of the Philippine Geothermal Production Company Incorporated, or PGPC. With more than 20 years of experience as a senior executive, he sees to it that sustainability initiatives are incorporated, leading diverse teams under his function. Let's all welcome Mr. Jason Aguirre. Also joining us is the Chief Sustainability Officer of the First Philippine Holdings Corporation, or FPHC. She is awarded as one of Asia's Sustainability Superwomen by CSR Works International. Please welcome Ms. Agnes De Jesus. Our next guest is the Chief Strategy Officer of Cebu Pacific and is in charge of the airline's corporate strategy, which includes sustainability initiatives. Let's all welcome Mr. Alex Reyes. And our final panelist, a 30-year professional focused on environmental sustainability and governance, now serving as a sustainability consultant for De La Salle University Animo Labs Foundation and senior environmental consultant for the city of Bacolod. Please welcome Engineer Mackie Maceda. All right. We shall see if Engineer Mackie has made it to our session today. But with that, we will begin and get into our discussion straight away. Now, once again, a pleasant afternoon to all of you. Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists here today. Thank you for being here to share your insights and, of course, your experiences. And, of course, thank you once again to SM and to WWF for bringing us all together. Now, before we begin, we would like to invite all of our guests here today to actively participate in the asking of questions. And of course, as you saw in the beginning of our sessions earlier today, it's interactive. You can access Mentimeter through the QR code. And we invite you all to please do share your hearts, minds, and souls in asking what you need to find out today. And of course, if there are any opportunities that we can do to collaborate further, we'll do our best to ask all and entertain each of your questions. All right, now to begin, we are very excited to get this discussion going, and we are going to begin with the panel's general reaction individually to the Philippine scenario on renewable energy sources. So this is a big conversation and a big topic, and we want to see what the panelists think on what kind of prepared environment is truly necessary to achieve the RE supply, or renewable energy supply, for businesses to actually realistically be able to shift into renewable sources of energy for their businesses. Anyone is free to begin, and anyone is also free to comment in between whenever you would like.
So probably I'll start.
Sure, Ms.
Okay,
Vicky.
good.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. I guess I'm reading about this renewable energy in the last how many years, because we have ASEN in our group. And based on that report, I think one report from the Energy Tracker of Asia, renewable energy, and the Philippines has, I guess, a lot of potential in producing a lot of REs. We have geothermal, we have wind, we have solar, we have biomass. And I guess our friend from WWF also published one report related to that it is 100% feasible for our country to be on RE. Now, what are the challenges? I guess the first one is access to financing, right? It's difficult. I guess we have to have funds, capital for us to be able to address the upfront costs and technological costs and the development costs associated in building up an RE. Well, and remember, this is situated across the country, so the cost of implementing this will be double or triple depending on the location. So that's my take. But in terms of potential, definitely we are there.
That is very wonderful to hear that in terms of potential, we are there. And it seems that the desire and the passion is there as well. And you mentioned climate financing, which is a huge conversation about investments being really led towards realistic climate actions that can be done today and not 10 years or 20 years from now, but right now. Is there anybody else that would like to share any insights? Ms. Melissa.
Let me take that on. I guess what we need to be able to do is to create a big ecosystem, right? We need to be able to encourage generators and suppliers, because as we know in the Philippines, capacity is very limited. I don't think there is a shortage of intention to adopt renewable energy, but supply realistically is not there. And what we also need is an ecosystem with incentives that will incentivize not only the producers, but also the users. And the other thing I think is we need to be able to scale. We're talking about big corporates in this forum, but we just came from the UNGC local chapter, GCNP, where we want to make the shift to renewables very inclusive. So it's not just the big corporates, but also the MSMEs. And I guess it boils down also to the cost of adopting the technology. So we're back to the conversation of the point that Vicky raised, which was we need to be able to find reasonable financing so that adoption across the industry, whether it's big corporates corporates or MSMEs, renewables will be something that people can access.
Thank you so much, Ms. Melissa.
Yeah, Tony, good afternoon. Good afternoon,
Thank you,
everyone.
Sir Jason.
Thank you for organizing or inviting me and organizing this event. It is indeed a privilege to be part of a group that walks the talk and leads on sustainability. I'd have a little bit of a different take from the answers earlier. I think there are three interrelated considerations for the shift to renewables. First, I think users, the businesses, need also to do their part. There are a lot of things that we can do. Energy efficiency, zero waste, and a culture of change, where we promote the use of reusable materials, recyclables, and all that. It has been mentioned this morning. In the second point, in the case of renewable energy players, it is imperative that we continue also to safeguard the current assets that we have and be able to invest in new capacities. In PGPC, we believe that geothermal plays a significant role in the renewable energy mix because it is still the only reliable and cost-effective base load RE to date in the world. And we are, in fact, in the ring of fire, so we are in abundant heat. So geothermal is 24/7, available rain or shine, and day or night. So its absence in the mix will also mean that you would have to still maintain our big coal plants. So in terms of technology, on my last point, I think we need to be able to use it to our advantage, and in a Philippine setting. So we need to take a look internally how we can translate technology into something that would benefit our e-shift.
Thank you very much for sharing that, and of course for spotlighting the wonderful potential and capacity of geothermal energy, especially in the Philippines. Ms. Agnes?
On my part, what to prepare for to make sure there's RE supply. First, policies. I think in terms of RE policies, we're okay. Because 17 out of the 30 policies issued by the government from 2019 to 2022 is on RE. So that's 57%. The next is, do we have the resource, right? So we have 134,883 megawatts of renewable energy. But then how do you translate that into supply? I think what we need to do is to have a business plan. Not only saying we have that much of RE, but what, where, and how much. And then the third is, I think we need a lot of upgrade. We need to upgrade our grid so that it can accommodate a diversified set of power technologies. We need to upgrade our transmission line so it can go to the areas needing it. And then we need a utility scale storage technology. Why? To introduce stability to this variable RE. At 4 o'clock, there's no sunlight. Sometimes there's no wind. And the other two, I think we should have a plan on decentralization so that we can have resilience in the off-grid and island areas. And lastly, of course, fund is important. We need to have enhanced access to fund. Why? Because when you look at the pre-assessment study that needs to be done to look at all of this potential, the International RE Agency said you need $2.3 billion. That's 1.4 trillion pesos. And when you want to do the 35% RE in the energy plan up to 50%, that's around $121 billion or 6.9 trillion pesos at 1:57 conversion. So those basics are, I think, important for us to prepare for.
Thank you very, very much for your insights, Ms. Agnes. And of course, Sir Jason.
Yeah, let me provide sort of a practical perspective to this now,
Sir
because
Alex.
a lot of the companies, I think here in this room, are already wanting to actually buy renewable energy. But from us, this is something that we actually explored this year. So can we actually get renewable energy in the small quantities that we needed to run all of our facilities now? And the response from our suppliers, our power suppliers, sorry, there's none available. They're sold out. Okay. And the other response that we got was, you probably have to wait until 2024 or 2025 before they can actually supply us with the renewable energy that we want today, right? That we're
Happy
ready.
problems, kind of.
So I want to emphasize that one, that we do need the supply response. The demand is there already, but it just anything that we can do to actually accelerate the availability of renewable energy in the grid, we think will be a good thing.
Thank you very much for your insights, Sir Alex. And just to connect to that, we mentioned certain challenges. Of course, yes, thank you so much for joining us, Engineer Maki Maceda. It's so wonderful to have you with us today as well. Actually, with that, Engineer Maki, would it be all right to get your insights?
Sure.
Right away, straight up. And it's wonderful to see you again, sir, here today.
Same to you.
Your insights on the state of renewable energy in the Philippines currently, the status of it, how much more do you think we need to be taking action, and how can everyone come together to accelerate actions forward?
Thank you. I think I caught the last part of my good friend Alex's response. I think there has to be additional focus on other types of renewables other than solar. Solar seems to be the favorite of everyone, but it's not base load. In Germany, one of the best sources of RE is biomass and biogas. No? And that we have a lot of agricultural waste and food waste as feedstock for that. And that could be run as base load. And then the second point is, while everyone is talking about alternatives, the best alternative fuel is energy efficiency. Yeah, so let's not forget that. And I'm happy that RA 11285 is being implemented as we speak. I'm sure a lot of our corporates already are on the ball on that with their own energy managers, and smaller institutions have energy conservation officers. We could probably squeeze another 10-20% out of our energy consumption just by making sure that we have energy efficiency. Yeah, thank you.
I couldn't agree more, actually. Less waste always means so much more at the end of it, whether it's energy, pollution, the materials we use, the products we buy, fashion, all the way across the board. But going back to some of the points that were mentioned earlier, I'd like to connect it to this question. So we all really, truly agree how the Philippines does have a lot of wonderful policies and laws in place. It really is a matter of execution, implementation, adaptation, and really making sure they reach communities as well. Some challenges were also mentioned by the panel earlier on how renewable energy, there is a demand, but there's not enough actual supply. The cost of it, being able to finance it. What would you say for each of your companies or points of view would be the leading challenge that you are facing moving forward into renewable energy? But what also would you say might be certain processes, systems, incentives or incentivized programs that were also mentioned earlier, aside from the policies that could really push forth and bring maybe solutions to the challenges that you face? Sir Jason?
Yeah. Speaking from the perspective of RE suppliers, there are a lot of challenges for us really to expand capacity. To name a few, one is the infrastructure. Usually, the areas where you explore, there's basically poor infrastructure. So if the government can incentivize or encourage even the private sector to invest ahead, and that would be a great help. And the government can even prioritize the building of roads, telecom facilities, etc. Second is community support. Our current policies or rules and standards necessitate that we get LGU, and in some cases, indigenous people consent before you can even explore certain areas. Again, if the government can help and step in and get those prior consent, prior to investors actually going in, that would be, again, a big help. And one of the major issues that we have, especially in geothermal, is the fact that it's very risky to develop an area. It's high risk. So we can probably borrow some of the learnings we get abroad from countries like Japan and Europe, where there are certain subsidies, grants, that we can get during the exploration phase. And maybe during the development phase, we can get access to preferred financing There's a lot of country-to-country and developmental assistance programs. If we are really that serious now in developing RE here, maybe we can prioritize allocating those funds to this area in particular.
Thank you so much, Sir Jason.
Maybe I'd like to share the experience from PLDT. So for PLDT, we've articulated our ambition to introduce more renewables in our energy mix. The problem is, when you go to the suppliers or the generators, exactly what I think Alex said earlier, supply's been committed and there's nothing available till whenever. While you can do solar panels, we do solar panels in some of our facilities, it's still not enough to address or meet maybe our desire against what's available. One of the things that's growing for the telco industry are data centers, and that's very power intensive, right? So to be able to court the hyperscalers to come to the Philippines, you have to provide them a roadmap that actually shows that you have a plan to deal with your source of energy. So we are speaking to not only our cousin Meralco, but other producers of renewables to try to increase the mix in our the renewables in our energy mix. So maybe I will also cite one thing. So we went outside. Meralco, even if they're related to us, not able to provide us the capacity. What we've been able to tap is geothermal energy in Mindanao. So there's an abundant supply in Mindanao. The Philippines is, I don't know, #2 supplier in the world. But why can't it operationalize yet? So there are certain dependencies. There's the WESM that hasn't become operational to include Mindanao, and then the MVIP. But if that infrastructure is put in place, then it unlocks the powerful supply in Mindanao. And so we're looking forward to that. I think that got delayed by COVID to some extent. But we're hoping that that gets pushed and accelerated because, again, beyond solar, the Philippines has a lot of geothermal and other sources of renewable energy that's not there today. Now, maybe I will, there was also a question on incentives. So kind of the focus has been on what can the government do in terms of incentives. In the case of PLDT, I reduced that to very granular incentives. How do you encourage renewables and sustainability mindset among the organization? So what did we introduce? It's not only part of the CEO's scorecard, but for every individual, the plan is for each one of us to have sustainability targets. Because it's important that everyone has that mindset. We can't talk about this from a big perspective if the individuals who have the responsibility to deliver the targets don't imbibe that as part of their everyday mindset. So for us, it's down to including that as your KPI, and hopefully in doing so, you will create advocates of sustainability within the organization, and then you can go out and multiply that effort outside the organization.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's essentially walking the walk and talking the talk. And from our everyday experiences, we also realize the true needs out there as well. So thank you for sharing that, Ms. Melissa. Would any of our other panelists would like to give any insights? Ms. Agnes?
I think, again, the challenge is availability. Even if there is a commitment of 11,000 megawatts out of the 18,600 that we need for 2030, because they're all solar and wind. And the conversion factor of solar and wind is low. Solar is around 15 to 20%. Wind is 30 to 54. So availability is also important. The other challenge is, even if you want to shift to RE tomorrow, if you have a power supply agreement with a fossil company, you have a huge penalty for early termination. Okay? And then the other one, I think, do we need a support program similar to the Inflation Reduction Act of the US, wherein they support shift to clean energy, even small companies. So incentives are also important.
Thank you so much for those wonderful insights, Ms. Agnes. Anything from the...
I
yes,
guess
Ms.
I
Vicky.
will take the conglomerate view, no? So we have companies, Globe, Ayala Land, they have a certain targets in terms of energy mix, so renewable, what is the traditional energy, and so forth. But I'm hearing this, it's giving me like a lot of opportunity because we have ASEN in the portfolio, so that means that we have to build more energy RE capacity. And on that note, I guess we changed the target for our ASEN. It is no longer 5 gigawatt by 2025. It will be 20 gigawatt by 2030, understanding that there is really a need for most companies to use RE. So two sides, a user and also a supplier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on those wonderful targets as well. Engineer Maki Maceda, please do.
Yes, Tony. The industry I represent is the academe, actually, and I have several thoughts on that. Number one, schools are perfect locations for solar installations because of the large roof areas and daytime usage, right? Secondly, I'm happy to announce that RA 11393, the IRR was already passed recently. This is what's called the Advanced Energy and Green Building Technologies Curriculum Act, where DOE, in partnership with CHED, is now encouraging schools, specifically higher educational institutions and state universities and colleges, to develop and strengthen curriculums regarding renewable energy and green buildings. So my industry produces the engineers that will install for the corporates in the future, and we produce graduates in business and finance who will be making the decisions for renewable. What I would like to see as far as policy environments are concerned is to further bring down to the high school and elementary levels the importance of preparation for careers in renewable energy. I would hope to see a young grade 5 student say, what would you like to be when you grow up? I want to be a renewable energy specialist.
Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that, Engineer Maki. And to be honest, I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to hear some children already in some of our workshops and webinars that we've done who are dreaming of being a part of that kind of a future. And hopefully if we keep coming together, we can be a part of making those dreams come true as well. And given the different challenges that were mentioned, of course, we also said solutions, pathways forward, but of course, here we go with talking about the net zero targets. Now, when we speak of targets, of course, they also have to have accompanying realistic pathways forward. But given the fact that we do all want to do better, no one goes out there into the world saying, I'm out to do bad. We all want to do better. We all want to do the right thing. But with these challenges, can we really say that these net zero targets that we are setting can be realistic for us in the Philippines? Whether it's, of course, the global targets that we are looking at, and of course the NDCs. Here in the Philippines itself, if we are able to really make it realistic in terms of working with the government and what's actually happening on the ground.
So let me talk about the climate ambition of Ayala Corporation. So we committed to the gold standard in net zero. What does it mean? Net zero gold standard is that you are addressing all 6 types of greenhouse gas emissions. We are very much familiar with carbon because that constitutes 60% of the global GHG. Second is methane, which is about 20%. But there are still 4 other greenhouse gas emissions as defined under the Kyoto Protocol. Another thing with our target is that it covers all scope. Scope 1, Scope 2, and the dreaded and the complex Scope 3. Medyo nakakatakot. Because based on some estimations, this Scope 3 is usually 11 times higher on the average of the Scope 1 and Scope 2. So this is a big ambition for us, and you will see it's by 2050 because that's the pathway. Realistically, probably we should be doing earlier because based on some accounts, the 1.5-degree scenario is just around the corner. So that's the gold standard, and we committed to that. The umbrella framework that we are using for that ambition is TCFD. In May 2021, all the publicly listed companies of Ayala Corporation actually signed up in TCFD, so we are all signatories. And that means we have to make sure that we have the right governance process, the risk management process, we have the metrics and targets, and of course, strategy for climate resiliency. Then that's the second. What else? So what else did we do or we are doing right now? We have engaged with the global leader in climate development projects and all the business units. So we have 11 verticals. All of them will go through different work streams. We have started with the 4 core business units, the Ayala Land, BPI, Globe, and ASEN. And they have to undergo full GHG accounting, meaning scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Then they have to do intervention assessments, then target setting based on science, and the last one is to come up with the net zero roadmap. This is not just about mitigation. This is the holistic approach for us to transition to a better world, to a net zero economy. And I guess Mr. Dede from is here, probably he can confirm this, that based on SBTI, 90% of the GHG emissions should be reduced. And the first thing is that we have to buy. That's the RE. That's why we're talking about it. We can do on-site RE, so the rooftops, you can put your solar panels into that. Mr. Maki Maceda mentioned about energy efficiency. Yes, it adds. And then you go to your fleet, try to electrify that, and we have the EV law already. You mentioned about waste. Waste contributes 20% of the GHG emission in the Philippines, so if you manage your waste, that's a lot. And the last one, don't forget, scope 3, you can only do so by influencing your value chain. So those are the things that we are doing on the 90%. The last 10% issue offset. And that's where the nature-based solution, the carbon capture, and the carbon offset or the trading will come in. Remember, we are only allowed to offset 10%. The 90%, we have to find ways how to reduce it. So that's our ambition. It is probably beyond my lifetime to see it, but probably I hope that we are all doing this for the future generation. That's the net zero ambition of Ayala Corporation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Vicky, and of course for your passion and dedication. We can see that it really starts with you as well and in your heart, and you're truly committed.
This is the
So thank
second
you.
time we are together.
Yes, thank you very, very much. Would any of our, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
let me chime in for
Alex Reyes.
aviation sector. So globally, aviation probably accounts for about 2% of global emissions. No? We've all committed to the same goal, which is net zero by 2050. No? So last year, IATA, which is the international trade body that represents the global airline industry, committed to fly net zero by 2050. This year also we got from ICAO, which is the UN body that regulates international aviation, same recommitment to that, what's called long-term aspirational goal, no, LTAG, for the industry. Of course, that's quite ambitious. It's going to be very difficult. These are the right questions to ask. How do we actually put in the correct stuff? And it's going to be multiple pathways to get there. There's going to be both the small little things as well as the big picture items that actually help us get to net zero. No? And we're all quite cognizant of that it is very significant challenges for the entire aviation sector. How do we actually translate this into specific actions? One of our main pillars is to actually use a lot more what we call sustainable aviation fuel. No? So it's the equivalent of renewable energy in our sector. These are drop-in fuels that we can continue to use in the jet engines that we operate. No? If you use SAF, the promise is it can actually reduce carbon emissions by up to 80–90% compared to dinosaur fossil fuels. No? So it's not a zero carbon solution, it is a low carbon solution for the industry. And our dilemma, and one of the challenges we face, is how do we get a lot more of the SAF supply? How do we see a lot more, the billions of investments that should come into the SAF space so that airlines can actually have access to this, not just in the volumes that we require, but also at the price points that make it actually economical. So today, because there's still very, very low production of SAF, the cost of SAF today, sustainable aviation fuel, is easily 2 to 3 times the cost of jet fuel today. So big issue for us to overcome.
Accessible, affordable, and of course, able to execute. Thank you so much. We are going to move on to some of our questions from Mentimeter. This is something that is sent in from the audience. The question is, can you share with us how the CEO of your company integrates net zero transition in the long-term strategy? So what are the mechanisms at the board and management level that you have in place to ensure proper execution and sustainability?
I'll take that. I think for PLDT, we're very fortunate that sustainability has been identified by our CEO as one of the key pillars of the strategy for PLDT. So I basically put it up there together with customer centricity in terms of new areas of growth, best place to work. So sustainability is very high in his agenda. And then as I mentioned earlier, effectively the carrot and the stick, right? Part of everybody's scorecard includes a sustainability metric or sustainability KPI, because what doesn't get measured doesn't get done, and what doesn't hurt you at the end of the day in your wallet doesn't get done. One of the things also that we're taking pains to do is to ensure that there's a common understanding of sustainability within the organization. It's not just the sustainability office, it's not just top management, it's all the way up to the board, and it's all the way down to the last guy, the last lineman. We have to have a common understanding, because if we don't understand it the same way, we're going to go in different directions. So a very big effort is being done to increase the common understanding across the organization. So regular concept loading, regular webinars, so that people understand what is sustainability all about. But the nice thing is, in the sessions that we've done so far, there is very keen interest from the organization down to the lowest levels. So once they understand, once they hear, they're the first ones who say, okay, solar panels, is that possible for me in my house, right? Or, they're very engaged, very participative. When we had the seminar in SDGs, I think it was one of the most highly attended seminars. There was no star, there was no celebrity. It was just plain old SDG, but people signed up, people listened. So what does that mean? People are interested, people know, and people understand that if we don't do anything about it, there's nothing left for our kids. So I think that's very encouraging. So it starts with the CEO, but down to the last man, because nothing gets done if it's only a certain group of people who are going to execute.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing your initiatives at PLDT. Ms. Vicky?
Yeah, probably to add what Melissa said. In our case, it's always part of the strategic planning session. Sustainability is always one of the key agenda, and so that's why we were able to commit as a group to the net zero target. Aside from that, awareness is important, building awareness, educating people related to the target. We have ESG training at the board level, very intimate, just them, so that we know how they understand the things, because they will be guiding the whole organization. So we have integrated summit. Again, that is now for the broader group, where we discuss the issues of climate change, sustainability, risk management, and governance. And we have to make sure that we are giving back the information to the board. I guess some of our companies, we have sustainability committee at the board level. So for Ayala Corp, we just have one, and for the last 2 years, we are continuously updating them about what's happening in the ESG space and what can we do better. We also establish leading measures so that we know we are tracking on our sustainability or our climate ambition. So those are the things that we are doing. Still a lot of work, but we have to start from somewhere.
Thank you very much. And if there are no more comments on that question from Engineer Mackey, yes, please do.
I'm no longer with the corporations now, but I used to be one of the sustainability officers a long time ago. And one of the things that I've seen and preached as far as management strategies is if every single employee at every level includes sustainability in her scorecard, and it affects his or her compensation. Yeah, that's one tip that I think everyone can apply to make sure that what gets preached gets done on the ground.
That is so true. And once again, talking the talk, walking the walk, all the way from the top to every single member of the company or organization. You know, I always like to use the example of a simple tumbler. People underestimate the power of making those tiny changes. You bringing one refillable tumbler as one individual, one human being, in a year you could already prevent at least 1,000 plastic bottles, at least probably up to 3,000 plastic bottles from entering the environment. And that is just one teeny tiny change. So really, we can't underestimate the power of numbers and, of course, of moving together. And speaking of moving together, this next question from Mentimeter is really something that is very sensitive and extremely urgent for our country here in the Philippines. So the question is, what can be done in our country to ensure a socially just energy transition that can reach all Filipinos positively? Because when we talk once again of renewable energy transitions, net zero, and we've been throwing around, of course, the terms how it's challenging, it's inaccessible, it's inaffordable. And of course, looking at how as we move forward, no one actually gets left behind. Ms. Agnes.
I think that our government should look at three sectors. First, the dislocated employees. No? There are 12,000 people employed in coal. There are 80,000 employment available in RE. But you need to reskill the employees so that they don't get dislocated. Second, important, I think, are the host communities of the coal projects, because they too are dislocated. So there should be a replacement enterprise that's low carbon that government must plan for these areas where you are going to stop the fossil company. And I think the third is the company itself. You need to be able to provide the capacity for these companies to be repurposed to RE or clean energy, so really no one is left because all sectors are taken care of.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Agnes.
Yeah, Tony, I think the most expensive RE is when it's not available, right? So I think it's imperative that, well, speaking from the perspective of an RE supplier, it's imperative upon us to really safeguard the assets that we have and to build on it, no? So in PGPC, we had a target of, we have a drilling program with a target of around 50 megawatts. And so far, we're poised to exceed that, no? So it's this expertise and track record that I think renewable energy players can build on, no, and leverage so that it can expand capacity, thereby ensuring that cost effectiveness over the long term. So it's not necessarily just bringing down the cost per se, but also doing your best essentially to in line with the business as well.
Thank you so much, Sir Jason. All right, we are nearing the end of this wonderful fireside chat, of course, on mitigation. And we would like to ask each panelist's insight on this final question. So we would like to get your final words once again on net zero, because once again, this session is all about getting real on net zero targets. So as a closing, here we go. If we could achieve just one thing that is pivotal for your industry, what advice can you give to achieve those aspirations for a low-carbon economy? In no particular order.
I think I'll start. I think if there's one thing that it's not only our industry, but everybody else, it's a common understanding of the impact of what we do. If we don't understand and accept that there is consequence to our action, then nobody will take any action, right? So there needs to be a common understanding. And once you understand that, that drives your everyday action, whether it's taking a tumbler to the office, whether it's closing the light at the end of the day because there's nobody in a room. Little gestures like that contribute. It's not specific to one industry. I think it's just common. And it's a commitment that we will try to save as much of this planet as we can for the next generation. And I think that common understanding maybe needs to be generational. I think like Tony said, if you talk to the kids, they know about it. They talk about it. When I told my kids, they gave me a new assignment, sustainability, you know what they said? Mom, you're finally doing something good. So it's like, I sent them to school doing non-sustainability stuff, but these are kids who said, Ma, we talk about sustainability in school, right? So if the kids understand it, maybe the grown-ups need to understand it. And when we do, each one of us, regardless of industry, will be able to do our part. And then collectively, all our action, big or small, will make a difference.
For the
Probably-
generations of today and to come.
Probably I follow because she talks about children. And I guess that's also a pressure in our household. So if you have this woke generation in your household, they will start talking about climate change, the issues of inequality, and why you should not buy something online, etc., etc. They will tell you things about this fast fashion, and I find them buying secondhand. I guess that's one way. So I guess the thing that we can achieve, or the best thing that we can achieve so that we can move forward with the ambition, is alignment. Alignment that there is a need to do and to have this climate action immediately or as fast as we can. And there is also a change in the mindset. We have been hearing about mindset shifts at the start of the session and until now, and that shift should be coming from the top, from the director down to the staff, from the corporate to households, because we as a household, it's not only the corporates who are polluting the environment. It's most of us, the households also, we are generating a lot of GHG emission, from the government to the civil society. We have been hearing about this phrase, whole of society approach, and that is true. No singular person, no one corporate can address the issue of climate change. It is all of us. And we have to accept the fact that even though we are only emitting 0.3% of the global GHG, we are at the top of the list as highly impacted. So let's look at it. It is both a risk and opportunity. It is an opportunity for us to make sure that we will build climate resilience. Now that you know, you cannot unknow. And so you have to do something about it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vicky.
For me, the one thing we'd like to see really is just the whole supplier response for our industry. As I mentioned earlier on, we're quite reliant on the jet engine, and there's nothing that's going to replace the jet engine the next 10, 20 years. So therefore, for us to actually decarbonize and reduce our total emissions, we really do need to rely on SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. But today, there's still not yet that level of producer response to actually start producing this in large quantities, as well as making it available at economical rates. So our ideal scenario is what's happened in the energy industry, where if 10 years ago, if you're going to put up a solar power plant, the cost associated with that solar power plant, because the cells were kind of expensive technology at that time, would have been prohibitive. But today, because of all of the investments that have happened in solar energy, it's now probably the cheapest form of electricity that we can generate today. So the whole solar industry and the whole energy industry has come down tremendously through the cost curve. So our ideal scenario is something similar can happen for the sustainable aviation fuel industry.
In our case, I think the most pivotal thing that a business can do is really to embed climate in its business strategy. In the case of First Philippine Holdings, we upgraded our mission to one which is climate-centric. In 2019, we upgraded it to forging collaborative pathways to a decarbonized and regenerative future, which means, therefore, that the business strategy of our subsidiaries, you have that contribution to climate action, but at the same time, you have your commercial goals. So for our power segment, we're generating clean energy to reduce the emissions intensity of the grid. For our real estate property group, we're not only going to RE, but we're developing climate-resilient communities. For our construction, we are focusing on adaptation and mitigation infrastructure. And lastly, for our manufacturing sector, we have converted them to deliver green products and services specifically on energy solutions. So that's how we're doing it, embedding it in our day-to-day work and goals.
Thank you very much, Ms. Agnes.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned earlier, but I believe there's no really one factor that we can say that will be pivotal and make an impactful outcome. No, I would imagine that everyone was right. No, behavior, alignment, use of technology, and governance in a corporate setting are all important. No, for us to have impactful change. And I think I'd just like to add one more, and I think that's policy. I think it's very important that we're in an environment where the policy is aligned with our objectives. We do support the National Energy Renewable Program, where it states that that the mix of RE should be around 35% by 2030 and around 50% by 2040. Now, those are lofty goals, and I think that program aligns how we're going to get there. It's really just a matter for us to be able to follow that, execute that, and also be flexible enough to make improvements as we go along the way. Nothing is set in stone, including that, but I think it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, from our end, I wear two hats. One is the academe, and on behalf of DLSU Animal Labs, I'd like to reach out to everyone for more collaboration. There's a lot of envelopes that we can push, science-wise, business-wise, finance-wise, with more partnerships between academe and industry. And my second hat is I recently started as an environmental advisor to the mayor of Bacolod City. And I would like to see a lot more partnership and collaboration between public and private sector. LGUs is where it happens. And whether it's capacity building, we have to go beyond CSR donations. We have to really work together because even though you're as sustainable as you can be as a corporation, if the community where you operate is not as much, then we'd need help. So partnerships for the goals, SDG 17. Thank you.
Very much, Engineer Mackey. And thank you once again to all of our panelists today. I guess just to round that off real quick, I think we can definitely agree we are all on the same page. We all want to go in the same beautiful, sustainable direction, but not just that. We agree that we need more acceleration and action, innovation, and of course with that, infrastructure, financing, and integration of collective efforts across the full spectrum involving not just our work, but our family life at home too. And of course, we would like to thank our panelists for this enlightening and of course wonderful discussion about getting real on net zero targets. Let's give a big hand for each and every one of our guests. Once again, Miss Vicky Tan, Miss Melissa Vergel de Dios, Mr. Jason Aguirre, Miss Agnes De Jesus, Mr. Alex Reyes, and Engineer Mackey Maceda.